Alright, hey you guys, I'm so excited for today's video. If you guys also notice, I brought in some fall decor to ring in the fall vibes as the seasons are changing. But today I'm going to be talking about stamps, and more importantly, peel apart background stamps. Now these are a big part of the Simon Hurley Create line. When I first started my background stamps, I really wanted to make sure that I love the idea of stamping a background, but I wanted it to be more versatile than that. So these have little pieces in them that peel apart of the background stamp to really use on their own or create your own different looks and effects on your card, which I think is amazing. So today I'm going to be walking you guys through the do's and don'ts with background stamps, how I love to use them with the peel apart sections, and well, let's create some cards. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so as you guys can really tell here, we've had lots of peel apart stamps. Most recently we did Slimline peel apart background stamps, which I'll be showing you guys how to make more versatile later in today's video. Now some of them, like this one here, have different peel aparts all throughout of just random images that you can use on their own, which I think is really awesome. So if I wanted to use this flower by itself, I can peel apart and use it by itself, and there's a couple different pieces in there that peel apart. But there's also peel apart background stamps like this one where the center section peels out. So this one has this, and you can use this to create your own patterns different colored across cards. And there's several like that where they peel apart right across and you get one strip of the design, which I think is so awesome. So we're already gonna start out here with the tips. You can see I've already peeled these guys apart, and to fit them back together, all I'm going to do is kind of place it back in like a puzzle. And sometimes it'll be like a little bit more difficult to press down the other section. If you're having trouble fitting it, sometimes I find like bending back the other part of the rubber really helps to kind of get those back into place. So definitely just kind of maneuver it with your finger or bend it around, and that's going to really puzzle everything nice and cleanly back together. And same thing with this, if it's right in the center of your stamp, it should be really easy to get back into there. But then if you've got a couple different little edges that just want to stick up and be stubborn, just peel it back and it's going to fit everything nicely back into place. Alright, now let's talk about how I like to use and store them as well, because this is really important of a tip. These stamps are all going to come with a clear plastic sheet like this. And you'll see with mine, I actually keep them on the plastic sheet, but what I do is I cut right around the edge. So I love these Tim Holtz shears. With some stamps, of course, it's going to be easier because they've got a nice clean edge. And all I'm going to do is go in and just cut it right around this edge. This number one makes it a little bit easier for storage. It also makes it just easier to work with on your desk because I leave these plastic sheets on while I'm working with them. So by cutting it off, it almost makes it seem like there's nothing on your stamp and you don't have to peel it off in order to start using it. Now, if it gets a little bit more detailed like this one, I don't find the need to go into all of those nooks and crannies. Basically, I'll just kind of follow along the edge pretty roughly, kind of loosely. If you want to leave some parts on more than others, you definitely can. And you end up with something looking a little bit more like this, where you can see there's still a little bit of plastic on there. You can go around those more if you want. Now, by keeping this plastic on, all the pieces stay intact, which is really nice. And the only reason I would really take this off is if I'm stamping in my Misty stamping tool and want to transfer everything over there. Now, the really cool part about this is I can just flip it over. I can use my inks right on top of here. So if I want to, I'll go in with my Jet Black Archival ink. We can ink up my stamp pretty quickly here. And then once we're done inking, we're really easily able to stamp it down. Now with background stamps, I like to take my piece of cardstock and just stamp it right into the background. Now I like to use this Debbie stamping tool. This is one of those pressure tools for the Misty stamping tool, but I actually like to use it on the back of my background stamps. I find that it firmly presses, you don't have to get ink on your fingers or anything like that, but it gives a really nice even pressure over top of the whole thing to make sure that it stamps really nicely. I don't get any money from promoting this thing, but I really like it. I think it's a quality tool, but I'll link down to some of them down below so you guys can check it out. And that is how I stamp my backgrounds. There's no fuss in peeling these out and having pieces fall off. That's why I keep it on my plastic sheet. So of course you can stamp your full background out like this one, but the nice part about having a peel apart background stamp, I'm gonna bring a different flower in here, this is the Watercolor Blooms, is when you peel these apart, you can of course now use different ink colors on them. So I'm able to go in, here I'm gonna take a little bit of Guppy, which is a lighter orange color. Go in and I just go right up to the edge, and like I said, it's a lot less to maneuver around to color this in. Then I'm gonna go in with a little bit of Prom Queen and add some shading in here. Like we can get as detailed as we want, right? So I'm gonna go in with this little bit of pink. I can actually roll the ink pad on to get that color on and kind of blend it together. And of course, if we wanna do a little bit better of a job of blending and not have any harsh marks, we can go in with a little blending tool and just dot that in. We'll take a bit of Psych, which is this super bright lime green. I love Tropical Tango with Psych together, so we'll add that in up here to get a little bit of shading. And once again, I'm gonna take my blending tool and shade that down together. Then I'll stamp this down, give it some good pressure. And the cool part about this stamp is it's made up of a bunch of tiny little dots. And it's more concentrated in some areas to give it kind of a watercolor look without actually putting any water on it. You see that like little difference in detail there? And then I can do the same thing with this littler flower. I'll go in with a bit of Sidewalk Chalk, which is my light purple. And then I'll bring in a more mid-tone purple, which is Triple Berry. Again, kind of dab on that color. Stamp that down, and there we go. And that is why with some of these floral designs like this, it's just so helpful to have it as a peel apart background, because I don't want to mask off all of those different little areas of that stamp. So to have it like this and really easily able to color it in with different colors is just amazing. Now let's talk about using some of the designs that have kind of a strip out of the center. So this one's called Jewel Heist. And the reason I love background stamps like this is because it's a repetitive geometric pattern. And of course, I can use this to stamp down just the full pattern. So I'm gonna do kind of a solid design. Here I'm using a little bit of fake plant ink. I'm going to just kind of rub it onto the surface here. Once we've got the stamp covered in ink, I'll tap all over to get a nice even coverage. And for this one, I want a tone-on-tone look, so I'm gonna just take a piece of green cardstock for my card base. We'll place this down, and then same thing, I'm gonna grab my Debbie stamping tool and just apply a nice even pressure all the way around. Another way to do this would just be placing a piece of scrap cardstock over top of it and rubbing it with your fingers, but I like just the pressure that this applies so nice and evenly. So I'll lift that off, and there we have our nice tone-on-tone background. So of course, that's really easy to do with this. To finish off this green background, I'm gonna add down the flowers that I stamped. I've stamped down a sentiment from the Doodle floral stamp set that just says, "You make me smile." And with sentiments on a card like this where I want to kind of tuck them in somewhere, I like to just go in with my Fiskars Spring Assist scissors and go right around that sentiment and cut it out. I love these Spring Assist scissors because they spring back out and your hands don't get tired, but they're also really great at getting into tiny little details, and I want to cut up pretty close to the edge of this. Sometimes I don't like to just like create a rectangle around it because then it takes up a little bit too much room on the card. So this is just going to visually just draw your eye to the sentiment and not have any excess cardstock around it. Then I'll just place the sentiment right on the center there, and that finishes off this card really simply and easily. So using the watercolor blooms to create different colors when I peel it apart is a really great idea, and then this simple Jewel Heist background that was just completely solid color. Now with this background, if you want to, you can also peel out this center section and use this by itself, which is another thing I'm going to do today. So I'm gonna grab a larger acrylic black to add this down, and then we can start our stamping. So for this, I wanna do kind of like a colorful rainbow pattern going down the card. So I'm gonna start off with my lighter color, which I'm gonna use Guppy for, a nice light orange color. And we will ink up the whole stamp. And then I'm gonna do what I did earlier where I take a little bit of Prom Queen and kind of take this and roll it onto the surface. So I start my stamping by like using just the edge of the ink pad here and tilting it upwards so that it kind of fades out into that orange color. And now, like I said, another way to really easily fade it, which I always kind of like to do after, just for a nice transition, is just to take your blending tool with that pink color on it and blend it all together. And then we can always give it a light mist of water if we want to kind of bring it to life and make it blend and mix a little bit more. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to kind of stamp it on an angle like this, press it down onto my card base there. And there we have the start of our stamping. All right, so I'm moving on to my next colors. I'm going to start off with Psych, which is kind of a light greenish yellow color. And like I was saying earlier, the really great part about this is since I want to make it multicolored, we can do it together like this. So this would be a lot more difficult to make multicolored if I just had the background stamp by itself and I had to mask off certain sections. Like that would be a little bit of a nightmare. But with this, I'm able to do each row individually and kind of create the same pattern that I would with the background stamp, but do it separately. So here I'm using a little bit of Tropical Tango to make a darker kind of greenish teal color on the bottom there, blending that together. And then with this background stamp, you want to kind of get your head over top of it, really look there, interlock that design into the older one, and then give it some good pressure to stamp it down. And there we go. We're kind of continuing our design down the card. For this row, I'm going in with a little bit of Clear Skies. And then I'll finish it off with just a bit of Triple Berry down on the bottom edge there and stamp it down there. And look at how phenomenal that comes out with all of those different colors. Like I said, it creates the exact same pattern that you would if you had the full background stamp together, but you get so many different colors and you didn't have to like go in and intricately mask off every single line there. All right, so let's add a sentiment to this card. I think we really need something just simple and big. So I'm gonna use one of these sentiments from Encouraging Words. I think I'll use the "You Are Such a Blessing" sentiment and add it down onto an acrylic block. We'll use one of my sentiment blocks. They fit sentiments on there just perfectly. And again, I'll get the air bubbles out of there because we don't want any of that to transfer. Now for this, I wanna do some heat embossing onto black cardstock. And I love the alcohol ink cardstock. Now, we're not creating any alcohol ink backgrounds, but this cardstock is just so smooth. It's got almost a velvety feel, and it's really nice and dark black, which is amazing for really making your sentiments pop. So I'm gonna use a little bit of anti-static powder bag, and then I'm going to grab a little bit of my Versamark ink. This is just a clear sticky ink. And the powder bag just kind of helps to keep off any static and any powder that we don't want in areas. Going to give some good pressure there. Now I've only got a little bit of this white powder left, to be honest. I think it's time to restock my white embossing powder. So hopefully we can make this last. A little bit goes a long way with this stuff anyway. I just know I'm gonna get comments making fun of this moment. But we have to leave it in because this is real life, right, folks? Once that's all complete, again, I'm gonna do the exact same thing with my Fiskars Spring Assist. I'm going to save the rest of this because I use that very sparingly on my cards whenever I'm doing white heat embossing. And then again, I'm gonna go in here and cut right around the sentiment. And then I think it needs a little bit of something else. So I'm gonna take some Studio Katia April crystals, which are some iridescent kind of jewels. I, once again, didn't use these on a lot of cards in the past 6 months because we moved and I had all of my embellishments packed away in boxes, but we can kind of embellish this card just a little bit. So I have this little like picker upper tool from, I think this is from Brutus Monroe, honestly. I really like it for picking up jewels like this. I'm gonna kind of place them around on the card, and whenever I'm doing jewels, I like to kind of stick them right around the sentiment here, sometimes underneath the sentiment a little bit, and usually in little groupings. So here we're gonna do a little grouping of 3, and I think that just creates a really nice little visual triangle around the card. So then we can take our adhesive. Here I'm using a little bit of Collage Medium Matte, and we're gonna pull a little Kathy Zilski, bring in our glue here, and what does she do? She always goes, boop, boop. I think that helps to kind of just make sure that they're adhered down nicely. Boop. All right, enough boops. Here is the finished card with all of those little gems. I like how that kind of finished it off nicely, but this background with the Jewel Heist stamp was so much fun to peel that apart and get all of these amazing different colors on the background there. I love how this one turned out. All right, so last but not least, remember when I said that there's Slimline peel aparts as well? So these are the two Slimlines. And I'm gonna show you how to take these and use them on A2 size card as well. And of course, you can then take the square images the same way and peel them apart and use them on Slimlines. So let me show you guys quickly here. I'm gonna take this Slimline peel apart background stamp. This one's called, I think, Etched Flowers. I love the detail in this one. And I'm gonna peel apart all the different images in here. So we'll kind of create a little bit of a scene here by puzzle piecing some of these all together. So once again, I'm just gonna grab a larger acrylic block, put all of those onto there, and then we can take our Versamark, which is our clear sticky ink once again, and I'm going to do some heat embossing with this. So I'm just gonna take all these images on the block, stamp them down onto our card. It didn't cover the whole thing, but I'm gonna go in with a little bit of clear embossing powder so I can see more easily where these guys are. And then one more time, we're gonna do a little bit of stamping, so we'll ink all of this up. We just want to fill out the rest of our background here. So here I'm going to just kind of puzzle this in, stamp our image down, and once more in this corner too. So here we have our image all transferred. You can see that by peeling those apart, I was able to stamp them down onto the A2 size card and really change the whole background as it was. Now I'm gonna use a little bit of Nuvo Shimmer powder. These are really fun watercolor powders. They're some of my favorites to kind of color things in really quickly and easily and get some super cool results as well. So with this powder, I just like to take it and I do really light taps on the back of the bottle. It has a little fine nozzle that makes it super easy to kind of direct the color. So I'm gonna add a little bit of green, of course, where all of the leaves are. So you can kind of concentrate the color into certain areas then. So here I'm gonna add green by these leaves. And you don't want a lot of this powder. Like the tiniest bit goes a really long way, so that's why I'm barely adding any onto the surface here. Then we'll go in with some pinks right around the flowers area. So right around where those flowers are, I can add lots of color. If I can give my biggest tip, you don't want to squeeze these bottles at all because a lot is gonna come out. Just these light tapping motions that I'm giving are all you need to get even just a ton of color coming out of these bottles. So then once that's all done, I've added my color down. That was super quick. I'm gonna go in with my water, and this is where you're gonna see that magic happen. When you just saturate it with water, it's going to really bring those colors to life and get them kind of moving around on the surface here. And then I'm gonna go in and start drying this down. Now, if there's areas where I find that the color is a little bit too saturated, I can go in and just tap some of those out, but honestly, the color dries really nice and beautifully solid. So I'm just going to continue drying this. And if I want to add a little bit more color, I can always go in with another layer and add some more powder down. Then I can just lightly kind of react that top layer with a little bit more water there. That's gonna give us a little bit more color variation. And again, I can go in and heat set this again. All right, so once that's all complete, I'm going to adhere this down onto a stark white card base, and then look at that amazing coloring. I just love how shimmering and stunning this is, and it was just so simple to color in too. Once again, I'm gonna do just a little bit of heat embossing. I'm gonna use the thank you sentiment from the Sentimental Flowers stamp set. I love this, it's my handwriting. All right, so once that's all complete, I can take the sentiment, add it right down onto the card, and there is our finished card. I love how we were able to take that Slimline stamp and create a really fun A2 size card with it. And like I said, you can do the same thing with the square stamps where you take it and create the Slimline cards out of the peel apart pieces. All right guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video as much as I loved creating it and all of the amazing tips using peel apart background stamps. There are so many more. This was just the tip of the iceberg. So maybe I'll make a part 2 to this video as well, showing even more examples and fun things you could do with these peel apart stamps. Leave me a comment down below letting me know which card from today's video was your favorite. I would love to hear from you guys down there. Be sure to give this video a big thumbs up and click that subscribe button so you never miss another one like this one from me. Alright guys, I'll see you very, very soon and have a wonderful day. Bye!